Welcome to the heart of the West. In 1996, the BC Cowboy Heritage Society was formed, and the mandate was to preserve the history and traditions of this valued way of life. We have working cowboys and working ranches all around in this beautiful part of the West, and we felt it was very important to preserve everything about this culture. And part of the mandate of the Cowboy Heritage Society was to organize a festival where we'd celebrate the artisans, the gear makers, the leather workers, the artists, and the photographers, and of course the musicians and poets. And we're going to take you back to some of the great performers who have graced the stage at the Kamloops Cowboy Festival over the years. You might be amazed at how some of them don't look a bit older, and maybe some of us do. The relationship we've had with our First Nations neighbors has been very special and very precious. Their traditions are so important, and it's wonderful to see them being preserved and passed on to their up-and-coming generations, their art, their languages, and their culture. And we have a very special guest to start things off.
Hello, everybody. My name is Gary Oker, and I'm from Doigiver First Nation. A good friend of mine, Tom Cole, asked me to send a blessing song to this Cowboy Festival. And with that, I want to do that with our drum songs, Nachi and the Dreamer songs, that's been in our peace country for hundreds and hundreds of years. So we want to give the blessing to all those people feeling lonely and disconnected because of the sickness going around. We hope that these songs and this music give you comfort, sense of that we do care, and we want to give these songs to everyone, and that the event becomes successful and everybody walks in good health. Dans the woods in the car, dans the woods on the Gewa Archer, the Nazi wood on the Wa, Nazi wood on the Wa, wood on the Genaya, wood on the Genaya. Ho.
Thank you so much, Gary. That was special and memorable. Another big part of the festival, of course, has been the inductions into the BC Cowboy Hall of Fame and our scholarship funds, which help kids from ranching families pursue their educational needs. And right now, we'll take you up to Meadow Springs Ranch for the guy who is going to announce a lot of interesting information about those functions and those parts of the festival.
Hi, for those that don't know me, my name is Mark McMillan. I'm the president of the BC Cowboy Heritage Society. Happy to be here today as part of this virtual concert And first and foremost, I'd like to thank Tom Cole for not only sponsoring this concert, but putting it together and the hours of work that's involved in putting this together. Hope everybody at home enjoys the concert. So I'm happy also to announce today that the student scholarship winners' names for both 2020 and 2021. The Mike Pahela Memorial Scholarship for Cowboy Poetry in 2020 was won by Paige Ingram of Vancouver, BC. And the BC Cowboy Heritage Society Student Scholarships for Artwork was Michaela Castle of Mission, and the written work was Amy Baishman of 100 Mile. The 2021 winners, the Mike Pahela Memorial Scholarship for Cowboy Poetry, Kaylee Reynolds of Ottawa, Ontario. The BC Cowboys Heritage Society Student Scholarships, Art, Serena Lee of Surrey, written work by Tara Coulter of Langley, and the Cowboy Craft was Jalen Thurgood of Salmon Arm, BC. So as well as the scholarships and the BC Cowboy Hall of Fame, the BC Cowboy Heritage Society annually presents the Joe Martin Memorial Award for the preservation of cowboy heritage in BC. I'm really happy and proud to announce that the recipients for 2021 are Kathy and Mark McMillan. I'd also like to announce today, for those that don't already know, Kathy and I have decided to retire from the BC Cowboy Heritage Society after over 2 decades as directors and organizers. I'm also happy to say that after no one expressed interest in taking the reins, the Museum of the Caribou Chilcotin in Williams Lake has said they will take over the BC Cowboy Heritage Society and will carry on not only with the BC Cowboy Hall of Fame, which is housed there in the museum in Williams Lake, but also the Joe Martin Memorial Award and the student scholarships. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And, hey, Kathy was supposed to be in that shot as well. Mark said that she actually slid off the couch because she didn't want to be in the video, but she does so much and has done so much, my goodness. There couldn't have been a festival without Kathy McMillan.
Our mission is to help our clients sell their equipment in the most effective way possible. People who are looking at our auction, they are literally all over North America. You know, I'm getting calls from every state, every province. You know, we've got a huge reach in our marketing efforts with our marketing partners.
The way we do things is a lot different just due to the fact that, you know, like I said, you don't have to bring your equipment to an actual auction yard. You just keep everything on site.
Once we take somebody through a process from start to finish the first time, they get it. You know, it's very simple. It's more simple than they think.
I've used them personally and business. I've probably had them sell 50 to 60 pieces for us over the last 2 to 3 years. They keep in contact. They let you know exactly what's going on. They're very informative, and just the way they go about their business, it's kind, it's professional. I've just listed a personal trailer with them. I wouldn't trust anybody else to sell it, and I trust Mike and Progressive.
Well, now, let's get on with our first entertainer, and we're going to take you down to the Lower Mainland for this guy who's been to several of the more recent cowboy festivals, and he's got some great songs for you. And by the way, he is not Garth Brooks, and you'll find out why.
Hello, everybody. It's great to be here, and I want to thank Tom for getting me to come on the show and ask me to play for you, and it's just a real honor to be here. And the first song I want to sing for you tonight is called Keeping the West Alive. It was a poem written by Mike Pahela. Born 100 years too late, I've often heard that phrase. A cowboy from the space age, out of step with modern ways. Still pulling calves in the springtime, trying to save them all. Making hay in summer heat, round up in the fall. Times me get bothered, all modern strife. Politicians, bankers, bureaucrats that plague a rancher's life. There's a natural rhythm to ranchers' work, checking cows and fixing fence. Doing things that must be done, it all makes perfect sense. Oh, the work is hard and endless, but it's the kind that fits a man. Where honest toil helps feed the world in tune with nature's plan. Times you may get bothered, all modern strife. Politicians, bankers, and bureaucrats that plague a rancher's life. Oh, envy Charlie Russell, John Chisholm, and good night. But if all of us had lived back then, we'd be here to keep up the fight. Oh, I miss those days of the open range and those longhorn cattle rides. Someone has to pick up the reins and keep the West alive. Times you may get bothered by all the modern strife. Politicians, bankers, and bureaucrats that plague a rancher's life. Politicians, bankers, and bureaucrats that plague a rancher's life. Thank you so much. The next song was also written by a famous cowboy poet. Her name is Mag Mohini, and she wrote this song in 2019. It's called It Has Been and the Wannabe. It's on my last CD called Keepin' On, and it's just a great song. And I really like it because it kind of hits home for me. You know, I'm a wannabe cowboy. Saddled many good horses, made money on a gramophone, had a eye for the ladies, so the dance cards were always full. Said he worked harder than some. I told him I had to agree. He was just a has-been, I was just a wannabe. He was just an old-time cowboy, I was just a wannabe. He had a head full of memories, and he shared a few with me. And he painted vivid pictures, so I could plainly see. Then he left this world that has me. I'm still a wannabe. He had a wreck in Arizona, took a long time coming back. His rodeo days are over, saw his future looking black. Got a job out on the prairie, checking plans on all the stuff. But it was tough on broken cowboys, what I learned from all the talk. Just an old-time cowboy, I was just a wannabe. He had a head full of memories, and he shared a few with me. He painted vivid pictures, so I could plainly see that he left this world that has been. I'm still a wannabe. When he turned 80, spent his last days all alone, where he could watch the horses from the window of his home. There was something I was missing, and it sounded great to me. I wished I was a has-been instead of a wannabe. He was just an old-time cowboy, I was just a wannabe. He had a head full of memories, and he shared a few with me. And he painted vivid pictures, so I could plainly see that he left this world that has been. I'm still a wannabe. this world has been, I'm still a wannabe. Thank you so much. That was, I love doing that song. It was great. And anyway, this next song I'm going to do is a song written by Danny Mac. Danny Mac's a well-known songwriter and singer in Canada. He recently moved to, or a few years ago he moved to Australia, but he recently passed. And this song is called Competing Cowboy. And it's just a real great song. I got to put my capo on. Sorry about that, folks. And I'm sure you had it already. That's how it goes sometimes in the show, you know. Well, I'm not Garth Brooks, that's plain to see. Heck, I ain't never been down to Tennessee. Another Alan Jackson I'm not. This is something special that I got. I'm a Canadian cowboy, yodeling my song. If you find it in your heart, join in and sing along. We'll sing about Alberta, we'll sing of Saskatoon. I'm a Canadian cowboy, yodeling my tune. Yodeling, 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 yodeling. Never get to be a big star, so they say. Cause I didn't move on down to the USA. Say Nashville, well that's the only way to win. But I'm a little old, little fat, and my hair's too thin. But I'm a Canadian cowboy, yodeling my song. If you find it in your heart, join in and sing along. We'll sing about Vancouver, we'll sing of Saskatoon. I'm a Canadian cowboy, yodeling my tune. Yodeling, 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 never get to be on the Grand Ole Opry show. I might get to sing Williams Lake at the rodeo. If I keep singing and keep on keeping on, like become a star, like Stompin' Tom. I'm a Canadian cowboy, yodeling my song. If you find it in your heart, join and sing along. We'll sing about Alberta, we'll sing of Saskatoon. I'm a Canadian cowboy, howling at the moon. Yodeling, 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 Thank you very much.
Oh, Ed, that was just great. And hey, I think he was playing a river song guitar. Wow. Well, back at the very first Kamloops Cowboy Festival, and even the precursor to that, the shows we did in the sail ring at the Kamloops Bull Sale, we had a guy who wrote and recited the most authentic cowboy poetry I think I had ever heard. And we're so glad that he's going to come along today. Let's take you back out now to the one and only Dave Longworth.
Howdy, everyone. It's wonderful to be here. I hope you're all enjoying yourself and hope you continue to do so through the rest of the show. I'd sure like to thank Tom for putting all this stuff together and for having me by and join up with all these great friends and performers. This first poem was one I learned from Hugh Brownie Perry I met Brownie back in the early 90s, and I said to him, "So have you been in the Caribou all your life?" And he said to me, he said, "Son, I'm a West Chilcotin man." Well, roundup day is starting as the cold gray dawn begins. Old cookies mixing biscuits and the wranglers coming in. Cowboys from their Sugans rolling out to greet the day. Coffee strong and boiling gets them started on their way. Hempen strings are quietly snaking ponies from their pen. No one needs instruction in this game that's meant for men born into the saddle. It's the only life they'll ever know, facing Mother Nature's hardships through the rain, sun, and snow. Hackamores are quickly fitted, saddles cinched to humped up back. For a cowboy's nearly useless till he hits that leather cack. Then watch that toe go to the stirrup, see that cowboy hunker down, hear that cayuse bawl in fury as he lightly leaves the ground. Now to some, this game seems cruel, but a cowboy smiles and winks, for he knows no better method of ironing out the kinks. Thank you. Thank you very much. This next poem, kind of fitting because it's a springtime poem, was originally called Seize the Day, but it has since become Tammy's poem. Lights sifting down through the gaps in the barn as the sun's cracking out a new day. And I get the feeling I'm late as I move through the gate, 'cause there stares the old Two Socks Bay. Now, old Notcher, he's twitching like maybe he's fixing to see if I still got me some stickum. Why, me and that horse ain't got a divorce, I don't know. Boy, I surely can pick him. But he senses it too. Morning and dew, why bother in such pretty weather? Save it for snow and 20 below when there's need to be warm in the leather. And now it's time to make tracks. So I strap on my cack, step aboard and screw down my hat. And through long shadows and haze and warm early rays, past corrals and down onto the flats. We splash across the stream, the foals are careening. The mares are alert but still munching. We pass some curious steers, and then even a full toro appears, and then there's the mamas and the babies a bunching. And you know there's nothing that's half as cute as spring calves, shiny coats and big eyes a gazing. And maybe this place ain't so much in the big scheme as such, but it's ours, and to us it's worth praising. 'Cause there's room here to spare, and it's in us to care, and there ain't nobody cussing and fussing. Just good, honest working keeps our old blood perking. It's a life we won't trade, not for nothing. Thank you, and I'll see you in a bit.
Dave, that poem of Tammy's was just so special. A lot of us can say we have been there and done that, and I know you have too. Well, at the second Kamloops Cowboy Festival, we had a dynamic young Canadian singer who went on to a lot of fame, maybe a lot of fortune. She opened her own show in Branson, Missouri, and she also was the opening act for the fantastic Sons of the Pioneers. So now we're proud to bring you the beautiful, talented Eli Barsi, and standing right next to Eli is a very handsome, tall, musical stand-up bass fiddle. And behind that bass fiddle is John Cunningham.
Hi everybody, we are so happy to be with you. The Kamloops Virtual Cowboy Gathering 2021. John and I were talking about all the wonderful times that we got to come out to Kamloops, whether it was from Saskatchewan or Alberta or Branson, Missouri, wherever we were living at the time. It was always a big drive and big travel to get there, but always worth every mile. The wonderful memories we have and the great friendships we made. There was just nothing like the Kamloops Cowboy Gathering. Now this is very, very special to be a part of. So big thanks to tomcole for inviting us to take part. We get to do a few songs for you tonight. By the way, we're coming to you from Mooseman, Saskatchewan. Welcome to our home. This is our old 1905 house, and this is our dining room. So we welcome you. We're just gonna kick it into high gear right off the bat and do this Western swing song called Screamin' Jimmy. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 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 oh, whoa, 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 it's been a while, I've been getting round, write my songs and take them town to town. I just played a string of rodeos, now I still got 500 miles to go. We're moving fast, 8 wheels on the ground. Way back is where I come unwound. With my guitar sleeping by my side, that Detroit diesel takes us for a ride. Screaming Jimmy rocks me to sleep every night when I'm worn off my feet. Buckle down with my cowgirl load. Screaming Jimmy takes me down the road, and I sing, yeah, 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 oh, whoa, 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 that blue highway is hypnotizing me. It's all I know, it's my reality. But so far it's never done me wrong. Yeah, I'll make room if you want to ride along. Screaming Jimmy rocks me to sleep every night when I'm worn off my feet. Buckle down with my cowgirl load. Screaming Jimmy takes me down the road. Screaming Jimmy rocks me to sleep every night when I'm worn off my feet. Buckle down with my cowgirl load. Screaming Jimmy takes me down the road, and I sing, yeah, 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 oh, whoa, 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 screaming Jimmy takes me down the road. Aha! Woo! Little bit of Western swing, Canadian style. And of course we did that in the Canadian key of A. We're going to break things up a little bit, and I'm going to share a poem with you. It's been a while since we've been out your way, out to Kamloops, or seen any of you in quite a while. So maybe some of you don't know that I wrote a book called Poems and Paintings from a Prairie Girl. And this is a combination of two of the very most favorite things I love to do, writing songs and poetry and painting landscapes and scenery. So I combined 34 poems that I've written and 44 paintings that I painted into this little coffee table book. Now the poem that I'm going to share with you is going to bring us all over to the prairies of Saskatchewan, right to the Barsi farm where I grew up, and into the little farmhouse that I was raised in. This poem is called Farmhouse Rules. An arborite table in the middle of the room. Yellow vinyl chairs found their place. The centerpiece was cheery, wildflowers from the prairies, in a mason jar on a tablecloth of lace. The floors were old linoleum. They were kept so sparkling clean. 700 square of living space. We lived within our means. Cousins came to visit, seasons came to pass. Neighbors always came to lend a hand. The years saw many changes. Kids grew up and left, but they still come back to the farmhouse when they can. All that traffic through the front door, which always stayed unlocked. Everybody had their stories if those walls could only talk. That old farmhouse heard some laughter. That old farmhouse saw some tears. The blessings and the good times that lingered through the years. Take your shoes off at the door. Bow your head before you eat. Rules that were good to live by, and they meant the world to me. That farmhouse saw some living. That farmhouse raised some dreams. Memories sewn together with love bursting at the seams. With a list of rules I won't forget, they never will grow old. They helped make who I am today, and shaped my heart and soul. Poems and Paintings from a Prairie Girl. We get to do one more song for you. This is a special song that I wrote with my girlfriend, Doris Daly. It's from our album called Once Upon the West. And I think that this last year, being a Canadian and living in Canada has gone to a whole new level. But one thing I just will never agree with are the crazy winds on the prairies and the winds across Canada. And this song kind of talks about that. It's called Canadian Air. A Wyoming breeze floats through the trees at 85 miles an hour. A West Texas puff is more than enough to furnish El Paso with power. But nothing can compare to a blast of Canadian air. It can freeze your nose, burn your cheeks. It only blows 7 days a week. It blows in the snow, it blows in the rain. It knows when I wash my window pane. Ooh, yeah. It blows in big and blustery gusts. It snaps and snarls and growls and grunts. It blows the moon and the stars about. It blows the spots off a rainbow trout. Nothing can compare to a blast of Canadian air. Ooh, yodelay, yodelay. Ooh, yodelay, yodelay, yeah. Well, it blows in the cold, it blows in the heat, it blows the kids right across the street. We see it push, we hear it call every spring, summer and winter and fall. Nothing can quite compare to a blast of Canadian air. Sometimes it makes me swear when I feel that Canadian air. Riding on a wing and a prayer, you gotta love that Canadian air. Ooh, yodelay, yodelay. Ooh, yodelay, yodelay. My name is Eli Barsi. This is John Cunningham. Have a great rest of the show. See you down the trail.
Oh man, nothing like a breath of good Canadian air, although it's a little breezy and frigid today. Well, I think it's time to bring him in once again. Let's go back to Dave Longworth.
This is a poem that I wrote about a time I spent with a great guy back when I first started doing this publicly. His name was Alan Brown. And we were at a rodeo not too far from here. It was kind of crowded with a lot of people, and there was people with their hats on backwards and all sorts of stuff like that. And he kept kind of nudging me, going, "How fast? How fast?" And then a little later on, I asked him what he meant. So this is where this poem come from. How fast? I had this cowboy and poetic friend from Turner Valley over on the eastern slope. He was steady and true, the folks that he knew, and a good hand with horses and rope. He'd gone down the road, a young man, give them bulls a heck of a fight. Of course, they stove him up some, and now only Buck on in his yarns are the lines he'll recite. And his words can conjure up memories of youthful days gone by, of pouring him back at the old Longview Saloon, or his pal, who was destined to die. Now, in all the time I knew him, I only once seen him frown, and that was when we worked the stock show, just a little too close to a town. See, the townies had come out in droves. It was kind of a human stampede. Just thousands of folks milling around like cattle waiting for feed. And we got tangled up and strayed twixt the Ferris wheel and the bingo. And when we tried to mark our bearings, well, nobody spoke our lingo. Of course, they gawked at us from head to boot and said, "Are you with the show? Is old E on here yet? You know him we bit. Just tell us and we'll let you go." Well, by now, I was getting claustrophobic, and my partner was feeling the heat. So when we spied the colors coming into the ring, we lickety-beat a retreat. And as we're nearing the tail of the pickup, he growled, "I'll have no more of that." And this fella pops out and drawls, "Howdy, pards." He was wearing a spray-painted hat. You know, the straw kind you can see through, with the plumage and the tail and all that. He said, "Have a beer, boys. I know Kenny McLean." No? Well, he's cool, not like you cats. Well, then I seen my friend's brow furrow, and he shifted his weight on his hip. And leaning into this fella, he drawls, "How fast?" with this Elvis-like curl on his lip. Now, this fella takes the G and then a haw, and he's trying real hard to get past. And like a lamb to the slaughter, I mean, knowing he shouldn't oughta, he pipes up, "With a gun, sir, do you mean? How fast?" No, the poet with ferocity did growl when the stranger uttered that. What was the velocity of the foul when it slammed into your hat? Thank you. Thank you. This next little story comes from spending time with a wonderful poet and gentleman, the late, great Corky Williams, Luther Williams. We shared an abode some years back, and I'd been gone for a few weeks, and when I came back, I just casually said, "Well, Cork, it's good to see you. What's new?" And he said, "Nothing. Ain't nothing new. Why would you ask that?" And I said, "Well, I have been gone for 3 weeks, and there's probably 50 people in a 100-mile radius around here. Surely something happened." "Well, no, nothing happened. Except for there was one thing did happen." I said, "What's that?" He said, "Well, I hate to tell you, but your dog died." So my dog died. Corky, how in the hell did that dog ever die? So it was the best dog I ever had. I paid $750 for that dog. Would he get hit by a vehicle or kicked by a critter or what? No. Some say it was eating the burnt horse flesh that killed your dog. So, well, where in the world did he ever get burnt horse flesh? Has there been a fire at one of the neighbors? No. The horses got burned up when the barn burned down. And then your dog went in there and ate some of that burnt horse flesh, and that's what killed your dog. The barn burned down and burned up horses? Oh, yeah, it got burned right down. The sparks kind of came in the hay loft there, and before anybody could do anything, that barn just burned down around them, and they all died, and then that dog went in there and ate that burnt horse flesh, and that's what killed your dog. The sparks from where, Corky? Where did the sparks come from? Well, they kind of arced over from the house. The sparks came from the house. Oh yeah, it's all gone. The house is just gone. Well, what happened to the house, Corky? I mean, we don't even have open flames in there. Well, you see, there was people over, and one of them knocked over a candle, and it hit the curtains there, and it burned up the curtains, and they went into the rafters of the house there and burned the house all down. We all had to run out, and them sparks jumped over and went into the hay loft there, and then burned up the barn and on top of the cows and the horses, and then the dog went in there and ate some of that burnt horse flesh, and that's what killed your dog. What candles? Why the people? What are you talking about? Why were the candles in the house? Well, they were around the coffin. The coffin? Oh, now, Corky, who died? Oh, I hate to tell you. I do. It was your mother-in-law. She died. My mother-in-law died? Well, Corky, she was a dear, dear woman to me. I loved her as much as I loved my wife. What in the world happened to her? Well, I hate to tell you, but some said it was the sight of seeing her daughter, your wife, riding away on that double-seater bicycle with that hairless Christian guy that killed her. But other than that, there ain't been no news. Thank you all very much. See you in a little bit.
Dave, I remember you and Corky doing that song, No News, and my gosh, what an epic. Well, Dave is going to be back again in just a little while, but another memory of the Kamloops Cowboy Festival in 1997 was the fact that we had a blizzard the first night, Friday night. We had our neighbors looking after our place. We'd given them tickets to the festival because our cows were calving and they were going to check on everything on the way into town. Well, they never made it to town. We had 7 calves born in the snow that night, and they saved all but one of them for us. Also that night, we had hired a limousine to take the fabulous Sons of the San Joaquin, Lonnie, Joe, and Jack Hanna, along with Waddy Mitchell, out to the South Thompson Guest Ranch, which is about a 45-minute, well, maybe a 30-minute drive from the Stockman's Hotel where the festival was. The limousine driver saw that snow and those treacherous roads, and he said, "No way, I'm not going." Well, this guy stepped up. Butch Falk said, "Come on, boys, get in my pickup. I'll take you out there." And he did. And here he is with some terrific, authentic songs of the working cowboy, Butch Falk.
Hey everybody, glad to be here with you. This is the song written by Jesse Ballantyne. Jesse grew up in Saskatchewan, and when I met him, he was living in Colorado. So this is The Only Love He Knows. Jimmy is a cowboy, it's all he's ever known. Rides an old Brazilian, some vaquero, might have old. He rides the northern ranges when the summer grass grows tall. He's gone to California when the snow begins to fall. He knows a girl who lives in Denver, and her letters follow him where he goes. She'd like to settle him down. Will she ever? Cowboy life is the only love he knows. Is his hero, Charlie Russell, his heart's delight. Likes to bed down in the sage and watch the stars night. Campfire light and talking, singing at the moon. When these days are over, they'll be over much too soon. So he hangs on to the ways of the days long gone. I'd like to settle him down, but will she ever? Cowboy life is the only love he knows. This is a song from Ian Tyson. Made him a lot of money when Susie Bogus recorded it, called Someday Soon. just out of the service, looking for his fun. Someday soon, she'll go with him someday soon. Her parents cannot stand him, works the rodeo. Daddy says that he will leave her crying. She will follow him right down Scotland's road and go someday soon. She'll go with him someday soon. When he comes to call her Polly, got a good word to say, 'cause he was just as wild in his younger days. So he'll blow you old blue northern, blow him back to her. He's driving in tonight from California. He loves his damn dog, much as he loves her. Someday soon, she'll go with him someday soon. When it comes to call her Polly, got a good word to say, 'cause he was just as wild in his younger days. So blow you old blue northern, blow him back to her. He's driving in tonight from California. Loves his damn dog, much as he loves her. Someday soon, she'll go with him someday soon. Someday soon, she'll go with him someday soon. Here's a song for you from Mike Fleming called "The Rodeo Nobody Knows." Off the back roads of Utah, Nixon, Raphael, an old rough stock rider strives to thrill. His body's all battered from battles he's fought, all whalebone and rawhide with eyes like a hog. He takes a deep seat on Mustang that waits like a time bomb just ticking away. Flash of the spur and the mad dash of boots, Rockbuster starts today. At the rodeo, nobody knows, no crowds cheering loud, no trophies of gold. Every day there's a Wild West show. At the rodeo, nobody knows. A young man on horseback in the West Texas brush, searching for strays left behind in the bush. He senses some movement below in the draw. His cow pony dances and waits for the call. Ran out with the mad dashing down the ravine. The young maverick races away. And right there behind him and building a loop, and closes in on his prey. At the rodeo, nobody knows, no crowds cheering loud, no trophies of gold. Every day there's a Wild West show. At the rodeo, nobody knows. the carols, the violins right. It's what they were destined to do. At the rodeo, no one knows. No crowds cheering loud, no trophies of gold. Every day there's a Wild West show. At the rodeo, nobody knows.
My gosh, Butch, that was just fantastic. And actually, Butch built that guitar. And I am sure that if we were someplace where there was a real live audience, they would all be on their feet after that. Just fantastic. Well, let's check in one more time with Dave Longworth.
Well, hello again. I hope you're enjoying the show. I was talking to Tom a few days ago when he asked me to do this, and he reminded me of the first time we met. And Tom was down playing a concert for a team pennon event in Abbotsford at the big agriplex there. And after we went out and had a couple of cold ones, and while we were in the tavern there, this fella came through the doors, and he was all dressed in butcher paper. You know, it was the strangest sight you ever saw. He had a hat made out of butcher paper, and a shirt and a vest and pants and chaps, and even his boots were wrapped up butcher paper. And Tom and I looked at each other. We didn't know what to say, and we kind of just watching this fella, and he ordered a cold one, and he downed it, and he headed back out the door. And the minute he got outside, about four police cars pulled up and stopped and jumped out and grabbed him and arrested him for rustling. Remember that, Tom?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, I think we're going to have him back again, so prepare yourselves. You know, we would not be able to do this production without the generous sponsorship of Progressive Auctions and Equipment Sales. We thank you folks so much, and information about them is something that is important to us and important to you. I thought I'd show you my invention here. Branding time is coming up. Actually, we'll be branding in about 3 or 4 weeks, not us, but neighbors that I hope to be healing calves at. And I need some practice, so I built myself a very clever healing dummy. And gee whiz, for a price, I might be able to patent that and build you one too. Amazing what you can do with a little bit of PV pipe. Well, when I went out to Douglas Lake Ranch, quite a long time ago now, Gord Collier, who was also at the first Kamloops Cowboy Festival, had arranged for a group from the 4 Sixes Ranch in Texas to come out and do kind of a tour of ranches in Canada. And I think Bob Moorhouse was there as well. And when they gathered for a barbecue at, I think it was at Salmond Lake, there was one of the cowboys from Douglas Lake sitting down with a little group around them, and he was playing a guitar and singing some songs that he'd written. He was a full-time working cowboy then and has been for a long time, but boy, I'll tell you, his songwriting and his performing career has come a long way since those days, and he was pretty good back then. So, let's take you back to Ryan Fritz.
Hey everyone, Ryan Fritz here. Thanks for joining us on this virtual cowboy gathering. And I'm sure lots of you watching are friends and supporters of the Kamloops Cowboy Festival. And usually right about now we're gathering amongst those big sagebrush hills around Kamloops and just having a great time. But I'm glad you folks are still tuning in and craving the cowboy and western music. So I'll try and give you a little bit. Here's one of my favorite old classics, and it's Get Along Little Doggies, and I heard it from Ian Tyson on one of his old albums. That's the way I learned it, so sing along if you know the words, or whoop. As I was walking one morning for pleasure, I spied a cowpuncher riding along. His hat was thrown back and his spurs was jingling. As he approached, he was singing this song. Whoopie-tie-yi-o, get along, little doggies, it's your misfortune and none of my own. Whoopie-tie-yi-o, get along, little doggies, you know Wyoming's gonna be your new home. Well, your mama, she was raised way down in Texas, where the Jimson weed hadn't a saddler grown. We're gonna fill you up on prickly parachoya till you are ready for Idaho. Idaho, Idaho, whoopie-tie-yi-o, get along, little doggies, it's your misfortune and none of my own. Whoopie-tie-yi-o, get along, little doggies, you know Wyoming will be your new home. Well, it's early in the springtime, then we round up the doggies. We mark them, we brand them, then we bob off the tails. Round up the horses, load up the chuck wagon, send them mangy critters out on that great trail. Whoopie-tie-yi-o, get along, little doggies, it's your misfortune and none of my own. Whoopie-tie-yi-o, get along, little doggies, you know Wyoming will be your new home. Whoopie-tie-yi-o, get along, little doggies, it's your misfortune and none of my own. Whoopie-tie-yi-o, get along, little doggies, you know Wyoming will be your new home. Get along, get along. Yeah. Well, were you singing? Some of you were. Oh, back in the year 2000, I was still working at Douglas Lake, and it was right about this time of year, and the snow is melting, and cows are getting ready to cow. That's when I wrote this song for my second album. It's hard to believe I got 6, and the 7th one is almost ready. We'll tell you a little bit more about that after. This song is called Spring on the North Fork. Things are looking up this morning as I look out toward the west. There's a warm wind blowing out, and I'm only halfway dressed. I've been waiting all this winter to break the ice on that old trough, and the ravens and the eagles have barely got the time to talk. Springtime finally hit the old North Fork, and the water's on the rise. Cows are grazing on them bunch grass hills. It's getting close to calving time. Springtime finally hit the old North Fork, and it's time to come alive. So blow the dust off my saddle, and I'll catch up my cabin horse. There's miles of fence to cover now, and lots of calves of course. I've been waiting all this winter, break the colt I bought last fall. But I can tell it's been a long one by the way that I climb on. Springtime finally hit the old North Fork, and the water's on the rise. Cows are grazing on them Butch grass hills. It's getting close to calving time. Springtime finally hit the old North Fork, and it's time to come alive. Springtime finally hit the old North Fork, and it's time to come alive. Yes, it's time to come alive. Yes, it's time to come alive. All right. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for listening. So I made mention of a new album I'm working on, and started it back in January, and we're getting close to finish. So this was back in the studio, my friend Ben Crane. So looking forward to giving you guys more details about that. You can follow me on my Facebook or at my website, ryanfritz.net. A lot of cowboy songs, and here's one we put on the new album. It's called Girl with a Horse. When the sun hits her face, her feet hit the floor, she's out the door running to the barn every morning. She throws a little hay, brushes down his mane, then she's gone in the dust of the big yellow bus, that girl with a horse. She don't eat until her pony eats. She don't sleep until her pony sleeps. And she's out there running every chance she gets. Daddy, don't you worry about the boys. She's a girl with a horse. She works 2 jobs in town after school. She wants to buy a pickup, a little freedom too. Take her horse and her dreams on down the road. She has lots of heart, but she doesn't have woe. She's a girl with a horse, and she don't eat until her pony eats. She don't sleep until her pony sleeps. And she's out there running every chance she gets. Daddy doesn't worry about the boys. She's a girl with a horse. No, mama, don't you worry about the boys. She's a girl with a horse. All right, I'm sure some of you have raised a girl with a horse or know one, so you might be able to relate to that one. So yeah, check in with us and we'll keep you updated when the new album's coming out. Thanks again for joining us, and I appreciate you tuning in. Hope we can see you real soon. I'm going to do one more for you if there's time. And a lot of the old cowboy songs, the ones that the fellas sang on their night guard and while they were working, were just, they changed the words to songs that were of that time, or some of the, like the Irish and Scottish ballads. And this isn't one of those, but it's a song I took that probably most of you have heard or know. And I tweaked it a little bit to Little Cowboy Owes It. And this song was wrote for Patsy Cline, Walking After Midnight. But of course, a cowboy doesn't walk, so he be riding. This is Riding After Midnight. After midnight, out in the moonlight, just like we used to do. I'm always riding after midnight, searching for you. I ride for miles, way off the highway. That's just my way of saying I love you. I'm always riding after midnight, searching for you. I stopped to see a weeping willow crying on her pillow. Maybe she's crying for me. As the skies turn gloomy, a nighthawk whispers to me, I'm lonesome as I can be. I go riding after midnight, out in the moonlight, and hoping you will be somewhere out riding after midnight, searching for me. Let's go riding. I stopped to see a weeping willow crying on her pillow. Maybe she cries for me. As the skies turn gloomy, a nighthawk whispers to me, I'm lonesome as I can be. I go out riding long after midnight, out in the moonlight, hoping you'll be somewhere out riding after midnight, searching for me. I go out riding after midnight, searching for you. Thank you very much. Hope to see you soon. Take care.
Got something special coming up in just a few minutes. Not that this isn't special. One more time, here's Dave Longworth.
Well, folks, I hope you're having a real good time. And I want to say a couple of thank yous here while I have the opportunity. Once again, I'd like to thank Tom and all his folks for putting this together. I'd like to thank Mark and Kathy McMillan for all the work they did in carrying on the tradition of the Kamloops Cowboy Festival. I'd like to thank all the volunteers over the years who made that such a special, special event and like a second home for me. And I'd like to say a special thank you to Linda and Mike Bohallo, who put their heart and soul into the event to make it start in the beginning. This is a poem that came from Medicine Hat, Alberta, back a little over 100 years ago. A lady named Rhoda Sabell had a thoroughbred ranch out there, and somehow, in between running that ranch on her own, she was able to write this incredible little book. It's called Voices from the Range. And this is called Our Last Ride. We drifted out west together in the light of the dying day. The town fading far behind us, bathed in its gaslight ray. The smell of the rain-swept prairie blew up to us strong and sweet, and the only music we needed was the ring of unshod feet. We thought of the times that were over. We thought of the times it would be. We thought of the present in silence when you'd say goodbye to me. I see your face in the shadows, as I did on that night, though it's been years since we drifted together out in that fading light. And then the smell of the silver sagebrush and the moan of the western wind as it blew up around our faces, it all comes back to mind. We said goodbye and we parted. Your trail, new cut and strange, drifting apart to meet no more, our last old ride on the range. Though I never see a sunset, that ride comes back to me, and in the wave of the silver sagebrush, once more your face I see, and the south wind calls me to you, strong and warm and sweet, and I still hear your voice, so tender and true, in the music of unshod feet. Thank you all very much. Thanks for having me by. Be healthy. I'll see you down the trail. God bless.
It's so great to have Dave Longworth along with us. Gosh, I love the way he paints those fantastic word pictures. Well, this whole project was the brainchild of Tom Cole, and of course, Tom and Brian have been at the Kamloops Cowboy Festival many, many times, and they've performed in a lot of other places too. Brian has now moved way up to Fort Nelson, but Tom managed to get him involved. So let's go up to the Northern Range now, and Tom, it's all yours.
Well, thank you, Hugh. It's good to be here. So this is a song was written by a friend of mine, Al Young. He lives in Vulcan, Alberta. 1, 2, 3. Sometimes out on the prairie, evenings get so still, you'll hear things that town folks never will. Hear a night bird calling in, an evening breeze sigh. You're listening to a prairie lullaby. Lullaby, hi, hi, hi. Lullaby, hi, hi. That big old moon just sits there, perched up in the sky, so he can listen to a prairie lullaby. Can you hear that doggy bawling way down in the draw? Supper time, he's looking for his mom. Until they get together, they will by and by, they'll be singing a prairie lullaby. Lullaby, hi, hi, hi. Lullaby. Sits there, perched up in the sky, so he can always hear a prairie lullaby. Jim McLennan. Coyote howling across the prairie for his mate. He's feeling kinda lonesome, it's kinda late. Soon a whole coyote chorus will join his lonesome cry, harmonizing a prairie lullaby. Lullaby. sits there. He's perched up in the sky so he can always hear a prairie lullaby. Oh, Hugh. There's something about that prairie that gets down in your soul. When it does, there ain't no letting go. When my time comes, just plant my bones underneath that western sky so I can always hear a prairie lullaby. 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 Big old moon just sits there. It's perched up in the sky so he can always hear a prairie lullaby.
That's a good one. Here's Brian Salmond.
Well, good evening, people. My good friend tomcole called me a while ago and wanted to know if we'd take part in a little poetry and some cowboy songs and viral video type thing that they do these days. I don't understand. The last time I had my old poetry book out was quite some time ago. I think 3 years ago in Kamloops was the last time that I delivered anything. So anyway, I wrote a poem one time out of frustration because I couldn't write when I wanted to, and I called it Get Her Done. And on behalf of my neighbor Mike, we're gonna film this up and see if we can bring it to you. Get Her Done was a poem that I wrote at one point in my career where I couldn't get a good idea to bloom into a poem. And so I wrote Why We Can't, I guess, called Get Her Done. The pencil stood there staring at a blank and empty page. No rhyming lines, a new ideal waiting for the stage. For the poet's aging mindset, his busy life and such, procrastination all the time. He hadn't written much. But every morn when he'd awake in the twilight of his mind, were dancing lines of prose and wit, the rare and precious kind. He'd grasp at these all through the day, but never write a word. No evidence of what he sees and nothing he had heard. For his image of the Rockies, with pristine valleys wide, or Mother Nature's garden spots, he couldn't quite decide. He'd ponder on a pack horse wreck all spread across the west, or take you to a Brandon pen, just who could rope the best. Then pause a bit and reminisce in western cowboy coat. His eyes will tear in deep respect the horses he had rode. Then he takes off on a tangent about the country way of life, of quiet times about the ranch, his family and his wife. The best dang dog he ever owned, his old red pickup truck, or throwing fate into the wind and trusting to your luck. The ropings and the range wrecks are all things he could write, or dancing to an old-time waltz or cabin through the night. The bullfights and the bronc rides were out there mowing hay, wire cuts and heartbreaks when old bad luck had its way. His pen could take you on a trip to a quiet mountain brook and show you where the big ones are and even bait your hook. Then sit and share a cup of life with the aging and the wise and write it down before it's gone amid starberry eyes. Let's harness up the black team and hook 'em to the sleigh and hear the jingle of the tugs on a frosty winter day. The straw blow of the thrashers, the stooks and bundle racks. Of summer rains, yet years so dry, the earth was showing cracks. And pen some words of laughter, some verses with a smile. Then capture what I've seen or done in cowboy poet style. I'd love to write of all these things for each and every one. And someday soon, it's in my plans to up and get her done. Thank you. Well, the next poem I'm going to read you is a kind of a fan favorite, I suppose. And everywhere I go, this is one that's often requested. Before I get into it, I was informed by Tom about the participants in this show. And I know so many of you so well from the years of performing with you and being on stage with you and being friends with you. I can't tell you how much it means to me to really be part, once again, of a group like you guys. Thanks for having me. Worm the Barn Cats is, I guess, like I said, one of my fan favorites. So we'll do it for you now. Those cats had always been there, or so it seemed to me. They cruised the place in strict patrol and kept it vermin free. Old Sporty was the point man, and he always fought the strays, while Pete and Bill would cheer him on in snide but catty ways. His ears was always tattered like the attitude he packed. He was destined as a kitten, it's the way his deck was stacked. But pound for pound, there's nothing that can veer him off his path. He'll stand his ground and show the world his barn-raised feline wrath. Well, he kind of had it in for me from surgery at home that neutralized his rambling ways and doused the urge to roam. And we'd hoped he'd never hold a grudge to implications of the deed. And we fed him good and kept him warm and met his every need. Well, it's Saturday and sunny as we don our boots and hats. We're off to do some barn chores, then worm those stinking cats. Now there's potions and there's lotions and some capsules in the pill. It seems to me we've tried them all, and they're fine by Pete and Bill. But Sport, he takes exception to the basics of the rule. Since he's been had, it's awful hard to take him for a fool. We think we have his number now. This stuff's in liquid form. And maybe he'd believe it's milk if we served it to him warm. So just to speed the process, we'll apply it by syringe. It'll be so quick he'll not have time to either blink or cringe. You can tell he's not agreeing. There's a twitching in his eye, with dilated pupils and a smirk that's kind of sly. His razor claws extended and his hair all stood on end. He's puffed and poised for scrapping. He'll never break or bend. With welding gloves and waders that are duct taped where they stop, an insulated snowsuit to protect me at the top. I kind of feel I'm ready as I try to stare him down. I'll throw a Nelson on him and most likely win the round. He unloads his fury on me like a buzzsaw gone berserk. The stranglehold that I've applied just isn't going to work. He's shredding up my clothing and the stuffing starts to fly, a slashing and a gashing like some rabid samurai. I got my hind legs wrapped around his gizzard in the fight. His jaws are pried wide open with completion in our sight. Well, the kid was getting nervous and his aim got kind of bent, and he hit the trigger way too quick, and in my mouth it went. It slid on down like oysters, marinated in mineral oil. My eyes went crossed, I'm wheezing, and my blood began to boil. But lately, I've been feeling great and sleeping through the nights. And my stride is blessed with lots of spring, and I'm free of parasites. Thank you.
They say by the end of February, you should have half your hay and half your wood, because up here in the northern range, winter can go on for a long time. Well, I think we might make it. What do you think, Cody? All right. There's a guy who just sings wonderful harmony, and he actually sung the harmony for the vocals we did on our Creak of the Leather CD produced by Tom Cole quite some time, and it's really nice when he gets to get into the spotlight himself. And I know you're going to enjoy this. Let's bring in Clinton Giesbrecht and a great song written by Corb Lund with some help from Corb's dad.
Been hung up, stepped on, and now drawed and reduced to tears. done his best thinking, was handing the rigging for years. He's got a no trophy saddle he won back in '75. He's getting too old to travel, he's lucky he's even alive. He's a bucking horse rider, and he likes them a little wilder than most. You can tell just by looking that he'd be the last one to boast. Unless he's been drinking, man, he's been dry now for months. He's a bucking horse rider, one down at Pendleton once. He rode moonshine, 3 bars, and had rack and Kessler's whole string. There ain't a sound he likes better than hearing them silver spurs ring. Of the rosin and leather, the thump of the hooves. He's a bucking horse rider, today he's got nothing to lose. He's a bucking horse rider, he likes them a little wilder than most. You could tell just by looking, he'd be the last one to boast. Unless he's been drinking, man, he's been dry now for months. He's a bucking horse rider, who won up at Calgary once. He's a bucking horse rider, he even won old Cheyenne once. Thanks everybody, thanks for having me on the show. Take care.
Well, good evening once again. We're going to do you another poem here. Before we do that, there's a little story I used to tell, and takes up a little time, so we'll use that. It's about a wolf pack chasing 2 bunnies, and the bunnies are running for their dear lives, and they race over and they dive underneath a brush pile, and they're trying to catch their wind, and the wolves are all milling around out around that brush pile. And finally the little girl bunny says, well, what do you think? You got your breath? Maybe we should make a run for it. And the little boy bunny says, nah, let's just stay under here for a couple of weeks and we'll have them all numbered. Anyway, Slapshot Delivery is about 2 newlyweds that bought some cows and calved them out on a acreage, and they both had jobs. Mine was in the oil field and Joey's was teaching school. That's what this story is about, called Slapshot Delivery. Well, I'm homebound on the highway after working all day long, with inner thoughts of chores ahead. The cell phone plays its song. My darling wife is on the line. She's home from teaching school, and she's gone to check the heavy bunch, and now she's in the duel. 45 is calving, and there's going to be a wreck. She's up against a round bale, and she's going to break its neck. Well, get her up, honey. Just boot her hard and fast. If I can buy a bit more time, the calf could maybe last. So with pedal to the metal, I'm ripping down the road, hoping I get home in time to help this cow unload. I'm driving like the milltails with the afterburners hot. I'd be in jail without no bail if ever I got caught. The cell phone sounds a second time. This round's in hypertones. Every time I kick her, she just shakes her head and groans. Then I remember that old hockey stick a-leaning on the wall. It's used for sorting cattle, and it's endorsed by Wayne and all. Just pound her on the head, love, like in the NHL. Well, you've never been in labor, and that's not hard to tell. And now I'm left in silence. My thoughts are in a whirl. I hope that cow ain't carnivore and tries to eat my girl. But as I arrive upon the scene, the plot has run its course. She made it hot for that old cow, who left with great remorse. And while she made her exit, JoJo grabbed at what she could. She hung on tight and braced herself as any midwife should. The opposing force of motion trimmed the options fairly lean, with instantaneous delivery that happens slick and clean. The calf was airborne for a moment, and then it hit the straw. The cow cut back and bellered, her eyes bugged out in awe. Like little Bo Peep, she watches from her perch upon a rock, her stick held high in triumph while she gazes at her flock. Her makeup barely smudged at all, there smiled my better half, and 45 is licking off a big red heifer calf. Thank you.
That's out of Brian Salmond's mind there. That's good stuff. So here's I wanted to tell about a fella that I know that was in Calgary, went to the horse races, to the tracks, and he said he was checking over all the horses, and there was this big bay horse there, and he had a little jockey, and he said, by golly, that's got to be the one. So he went and he bet on him, and when the race came, said that big horse was so dogged slow, said he was the last by, said I don't even know how many lengths. Said I'm sitting there watching this doggy old horse come across the finish line. I got so frustrated, I hollered at the jockey. I said, can't you go any faster? And the jockey hollered back, said, sure I could, but I can't leave the horse. So here's a song about all of the things that go the way they're supposed to. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's roundup time in the big hills. Steers are all but in. It's been raining now for 3 days, and the creeks are running mean. The boys are getting tired, the grub is getting low, but we made it safe to cow camp, and soon we all go home. Got a letter from Aunt Molly, Granddad's feeling poor, but it's just a cold or something, they think it's nothing more. And Betty's jam came through the mail, it came in just one piece, and Cookie made us something that we could almost eat. All the things that could go wrong, well, none did today. Of all the mishaps that we missed along the way, I think I should be thankful for everything gone right. So you'll hear me say a little prayer in the bunkhouse tonight. Yesterday, off the green cold Gus gave me, got the rope up under his tail, but somehow we got it free. And sometimes I just wonder, as we do our day to day, why so many miracles come our way. All the things that could go wrong, well, none did today. Of all the mishaps that we missed along the way, I guess we should be thankful for everything gone right.
In the early days, I was kind of in the place in a big family where I was selected to milk the cow because of my age. My older brother got to drive tractor. I had to milk the cow. I was 13 and just a little feller. So I wrote The Curse of the Crooked Horned Cow many years later. You could tell it was a permanent scar issue. You could tell at a glance she was different as she inched her way down the ramp. A gift to my mother, no strings attached, happy birthday love from Gramps. Well, a milk cow was something we needed with a family the size that we was, and it seemed for a while that she'd fit our needs in a worthy and purposeful cause. There was Clay, but her bloodline was Holstein, with a shorthorn bull on the loose. But I swear, she was Texas Longhorn crossed off with a passionate moose. She had a prominent hump on her shoulders and legs that was 7 feet long, and could kick out the lights on the ceiling any time that she felt things was wrong. It was elected my duty by Father's decree to jerk the milk from this cow. At 13 years old and 93 pounds, I really was wondering how. But there I was at daybreak with bucket, no wooden stool, determined to milk her and then catch the bus that would carry me off to the school. Then it happened. We made eye contact. She sensed my rising fear. She raised her foot with lightning speed and stuck it in my ear. With cow tracks on my pockets, she launched me from the stall. I propped the barn door open so I wouldn't wreck the wall. Like a sacrificial lamb I was, the daily game of cat and mouse. It became a desperate challenge to get the milk back to the house. While Mother's making cream puffs and butter for our bread, I've got these evil thoughts in mind of T-bone steaks instead. A lack of oxygen to her brain, so blurthing, I could tell. This gutter-dwelling bovine was an advocate from hell. The evil side of darkness all packaged in a hide, with bloodshot eyes that torched your soul and burned you up inside. She became the predator stalking, and I became the prey. And she ruled the roost like a gangster until one fatal day. She found the grain bin door ajar and temptation called her in, and gorged herself on barley chop like a junkie in his sin. Then laid down in a shady spot and felt the banquet swell. It bunged her up from stem to stern and rang her final bell. And I've pondered and I've wondered why she couldn't kick it free, because on any given morning she could kick the crap from me. Thank you and happy trails.
And Tom Cole gets a song asked for just about every place he goes. I can't remember how long he recorded it, probably back around 1999 or something like that, but folks still love to hear it. And Tom, we're going to have you back in here to do that. In the meantime, I'm going to go tie up my horse and go up to the studio, and we'll try and wrap everything up.
Now, every cowboy's dream is to go out into the wilderness and fence a tract of land and build a house, raise some cattle and kids, and one day sit on your front porch and tell your grandkids about the days when there was nothing here. "40 miles from the nearest gravel road, we cut our lives from the ponderosa pines. We sweated hard to beat the winter snow, but the cabin's up and we've got lots of time. So what have you got planned tonight, Diana? Would you consider lying in my arms?
sure you're the reason I was born. Jim was born the first year we were here. And well, God, look at him. Well, he's almost grown. Baby's in the cradle, fast asleep. Just think in no time he'll be up and gone. So what have you got planned tonight, Diana? Would you consider lying in my arms? I love you more than ever now, Diana. I'm sure you're the reason I was born.
Now time sure does fly, doesn't it, Diana? Because already it's been 2 years since you've been gone. And speaking of time, I guess you know that mine's just about up, and I'm gonna see you tonight. Just another breath or two, and I'll be home. Oh, and by the way,
what have you got planned tonight, Diana? Would you consider lying in my arms? I love you more than ever now, Diana. And I'm sure you're the reason I was born. What have you got planned tonight, Diana?
that's a pretty song. Thank you.
All right. I think we're ready. Well, I'd sure like to thank all of you for tuning in and watching our version of a virtual Kamloops Cowboy Festival. Thanks to all the great work by the entertainers. And most of all, thanks to you, Tom Cole. What a job you do. And let's hope it won't be too long before we can do our songs and our stories and our poems on stage live someday down the trail. In the meantime, it's been something seeing you again in this time we've had to spend. You've been so good to be around. And we thank you for that special thrill. Keeps us going on until the next time we're in town. Though we won't be back here for a while to hear your laughter, see your smile. We'll remember what went down. And we can't tell you how or when, but we'll be seeing you again the next time we're in town. Till the next time we'll be passing through. Think of all the things we'll look forward to. Catching up with old friends, staying up all night long, playing western music, singing old cowboy songs. Places and the faces range across the bridge of time and change. Once again we're homeward bound. There's one thing we promise you, that's another rendezvous the next time we're in town. Everybody clap now. Now it's been something seeing you again in this time we've had to spend. You've been so good to be around. And we thank you for that special thrill, keeps us going on until the next time we're in town. Now it's been something seeing you again in this time we've had to spend. You've been so good to be around. And we thank you for that special thrill, keeps us going on until the next time we're in town. Until the next time we're in town. Until the next time we're